a funeral service.
Yeah.
I would think that out of respect for the military, you'd want to keep it open all the time.
And you might, I guess.
And you might not the first few years, put it that way, but after that, I would think
we look for that to grow slowly. And just an example, they're doing a brand new veteran cemetery over in Minnesota, and they said that in order to build a cemetery, the VA builds it, it would have to last 20 years, and they got a lot more veterans over there because of the population, but they only have 40 acres set aside for that.
I guess I've got a couple of comments. First of all,
Sure.
I am a veteran, so I really appreciate where this is coming from. I'm fully supporting, fully support the process you're going through, but this letter does concern me. I mean, it says that, and I guess I'm not quite sure what we as a city are committing ourselves to, because it says we'll provide in-kind support for the construction, maintenance, beautification of the cemetery. I mean, as a member of the council, not seeing any kind of numbers or knowing what our commitment's going to be going forward, I can't support this letter. I mean, I realize it sounds like it's something you need to move forward, but I want to have some idea what we as a city are committing ourselves to before we approve this.
I think the good thing about it, I guess, the cemetery and that, probably the maximum that would be required out there would be $500,000. Now, I know when you start talking some of your projects locally here as a city and city council, spending 8 years on a fair-sized project, you don't get it done for $500,000.
You know, Dennis, I'm gonna just throw this in there because I know that I don't think in my visiting with the council so far is that there's a real concern about building the cemetery. I don't think that's the big concern, but as you know, as you were there, I believe when I asked the governor if he would support it, you know, and his biggest concern was maintenance. And I think that, you know, with the perpetual maintenance on it, we really need to understand what the cost would be. And I know that visiting with Hugh and Nancy at the state level, that was their concerns also, is that, you know, we really don't have those numbers. And I think it would really be good if we were able to get a better handle and kind of have that understanding and get that down on paper, what we expect the operating costs to be, what we would expect them to be every year and every year and every year, because it would always be there. That's the question. So I don't think that's too hard to come up with, and I would suggest that we get that done right away. You know, that we have that. You've got a lot of smart people that you're dealing with, you know, and to turn this over to somebody that works with numbers and get that operating budget out there for us, that would really help us out a ton.
And Mayor, wouldn't it seem, and Glenn, I agree with you, I got that same sense there, but wouldn't it seem from a council standpoint the more appropriate manner in which to address this is in the budget cycle that we're going to be coming up with, where we look at our long-term capital, we look at what as we start to take a look at what our operational requirements are, wouldn't that be the time?
Well, it would financially, and I think that's what I mentioned early on, is that, you know, 17 would not be a year that we could do this, but 18 to go through that whole budget cycle. Shelley and I are working on budget already as we're speaking, you know, different things. So it has to go through that process of budgeting. That's where if we had this operating expense that you can tie into the budget, we really need something like that. And then to financially do this.
Yeah, and put that in with how we normally handle our capital planning, and then the added operating numbers going forward. It seems like that's the right process to go through as everything gets considered at that time versus just looking solely today at this one item.
Right, and I think, Dennis, you know, you were on the council for I don't know how many years, 10 years, 12 years.
Yeah.
You know, you understand how that budget process works out, and I really do think that we need to have that in front of us.
Mayor, all good points. Question I have is there seems to be a sense of urgency for the letter of support. So there might be two steps here. All good points in the budget. I agree with those. if we were to strike that last sentence of the second paragraph, does that suffice for the short-term objective?
I would definitely be able to support it then if we could strike that last sentence down.
There's an aspect in that last sentence, however, that it says revised local ordinance. Revised local ordinance, which my understanding today, there are an ordinance for 2 cemeteries. And we would need to have that
Right.
updated to 3
I think-
cemeteries.
I think I'm in agreement with that. You know, the cemeteries, to get the local ordinance change would not be a problem. I think what we're looking at is after the word "and," you know, the provide and beautification. I think then they would be willing to move forward on this, because I do think you guys have been talking about an endowment fund that you can get to help with the perpetual care also. I know that there's gentlemen in the audience that are willing to donate fencing and things like that. I think your costs are going to come down on the overall construction of it, but I think it's just a matter of the maintenance. So I think that would be a good call, but you do need that ordinance change.
Yeah, Ray, I've got no objection to, if we want to revise our local ordinance, that'll facilitate the process. It's the latter part of that sentence that I'm objecting.
I understand.
And just as an informational point with regard to our ordinances, we do have in there 2, obviously, cemeteries, Mount Hope and the Catholic Cemetery, but there is a third option, a third cemetery that could be put within city limits, that being for Mother of God Monastery. So there's already in ordinance an optional cemetery that could be brought in if it were created. So there's a model that we could potentially look at there with cemetery falling into a similar category.
Hey, Dennis, I might just
Yeah.
mention too, you know, if we do try to put some numbers together, you know, the snow part of it, I think we would probably use the contractor. I think Pinky Burns, I think, is who we use out in that neck of the woods. But I bet Rob Bainard would help you with some idea on what the cost would be to keep the snow under control out there.
The thing that I was hoping that we could at least go forward with fundraising locally, so that the whole burden isn't on the city for creating and getting this done. And I guess I just wanted to let you know what economic benefit to Watertown and Cottington County and the state of South Dakota is from veterans. The VA spends approximately $667 million in South Dakota. $12 million is spent in Cottington County. We have over 2,100 veterans in Cottington County, and that $12 million that is spent by the VA doesn't affect what I spend. That's in addition what I spend here so we're in estimating several $million that the veterans spend and create sales tax through that. And we're looking at about 18,000, 10% of what Mount Hope costs in relationship to the acreage of Mount Hope versus this 5 acres here.
And it all depends on how you read that letter, Dennis. I mean, I agree with what the other gentlemen are talking about in that last sentence, but it does not really, I mean, when you read it, it says to revise local ordinance, provide in-kind support for the construction, maintenance, beautification of the cemetery. It's not saying that we're going to provide all of it. It's just saying we're going to provide in-kind support. So it's not really locking us into a certain, we're committing to provide in-kind support. We're not committing to 100% of anything.
Are we just committing to support,
Yeah.
period?
Yeah.
So could we just take
It's-
in-kind
and
support
that's what I
out?
was just gonna say, it's
Yeah.
a letter of intent.
Right, so just
It
take out
could-
in-kind.
It could be changed on the road, I believe, Justin,
Would-
at any point, if we don't fulfill our part of raising the money
We're-
to do all the things we said we would do, then you guys can take away the letter of intent.
Yeah.
And I'm not, again, and I support what Don said, Mike. I agree that we need to get some idea what the costs are going to be. But would we be smart, instead of us retooling this letter right here at this meeting, perhaps we take this up with Justin and get together, the mayor and Justin, if you haven't already had that opportunity, outside of this meeting, retool this thing, and with the idea, I know you want to get something going on this, Dennis. We know there's a timeline, so we try to get it done as soon as possible.
Just a question. I say we take a swing at it right now. I think what we could do is if we could cut out, right after it says ordinance, just strike the rest of that sentence, maybe add after ordinance to accommodate this cemetery, period. Would that not get them that letter of support in the short term, but still give us opportunity to
Well-
massage numbers later?
Don, I think putting the period there and not adding anything is effective, because if you look at the first part of that paragraph, it talks about the city's strong support for the concept. And that's really, I think that's where we're at, in lieu of the lack of truly a documented overall plan that deals with financials, deals with everything else, bringing it into the process of budgeting. Do we support the concept? Well, I think the concept is fine. I have no problem even allocating and making a firm commitment as to the use of the land. So if we can so much as make that commitment, the use of the land, and the concept, the idea of it, but the rest of it's going to have to come together, as far as I'm concerned, before we make a commitment that would extend us beyond that.
It sounds
And that would enable these gentlemen to go out and start fundraising and start doing grants or whatever it is to do it. But it's going to have to take a look at both the overall construction of it and if it's time phased, whatever it is. But then we're going to have to take a look at that if there's capital involvement from the city in the budget process, and we look at where those dollars fit within our operational capabilities.
I think we can do
The
that.
letter would be the thing that would let Dennis move forward, and if it says period, great, because the budget part can come in, but if you have the letter that says the city is ready to support this, and it doesn't really say how, it'd be a lot easier to go out and ask somebody for money than you say, well, we don't know if the city will even support it, but would you give us some money for this? I mean, I think we're right on track to get that letter going ASAP,
Right,
and we make our financial commitment as we can.
in the budget, right.
You okay with that,
And
Dennis?
that way, yeah, and I would go along with that, and then, for instance, if we raise more money, we have a goal of raising the 400,000, some through the VA, possibly some through the state, and locally, and if we don't make up with our commitment to it, well then, you guys wouldn't be committed to anything either, because we haven't gone ahead with the project.
Or at least we'd have our choice at that time and be able to look at it and
Again,
give a
it's
positive
just-
input.
It's just a letter
Yep.
of intent.
Yep.
It's
Go
not,
ahead.
I'm
nothing casted in stone.
fine with it that way. So.
Okay, so Dennis, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask for a motion and a second to further discuss this. And I would ask that the motion include striking the words after the word ordinance in the second paragraph.
I would make that motion.
So I have a motion by Randy and second by Bruce. Is there any other questions? Hearing none, I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carries.
Thank you, gentlemen, for all your hard work.
Yep.
Thank you guys for everything you
And
do.
that's going to do it for you.
Uh,
That'll help.
It'll definitely help, yes. And like I say, we'll go out and plan on doing a fundraising, and if we don't hold up our side of the bargain, then we wouldn't be expecting you to hold up your side.
I appreciate the fact that you're just bringing this back as a city cemetery. I know you didn't have any luck with the governor and the people in Pierre on getting any funding for this, so I'm glad you didn't let the process just die, and thank you guys for all your hard work.
Yeah, and we really didn't try with the governor. He just said that there was no money in the budget this year, and we talked to Hugh and Nancy, and Hugh says that he figures we will have much better chance of getting money from the state next year. But we're looking to keep the project going and making every step that we can forward.
Okay, thanks, Dennis. Thanks, gentlemen.
I have just one more question.
Yeah.
All right. After receiving the letter of intent, at a later time, after we fulfill some of our financial obligations to this, perhaps there can be an agreement made for the in-kind support. So not at this juncture, but at a later time, and maybe to be included in the 2018 budget.
I think that's a good request, and I think that would work out real well. Yeah, perfect.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ray. Okay, moving on. We'll go to number 4. It's an application for a temporary location transfer and return of a retail on-sale liquor license owned by Zeus Incorporated, doing business as 2nd Street Station, as follows. A, for the period of 4 p.m. February 17th of 2017 to 12 a.m. February 18th of 2017 from 15 2nd Street Southwest to 1910 West Kemp. At this time, I will open the public hearing. If there's anyone that wants to speak in favor of or against this is your opportunity. Hearing none, I will close the public hearing. I will look for a motion and a second for discussion. Motion by Bill and second by Dan. Any questions that you have on this one here?
Always confused. They actually close the doors in downtown during that time period, or
No,
just,
I believe they
just
have-
sell food, or?
No, they have the opportunity to have another license. In fact, we've changed that. Yeah, we changed that a few years ago, so they'll be up and running.
It used to be a few years ago they could have used their beer or wine license at the other location, but they couldn't serve one or the other, but we changed it, so.
Yep, no, they'll be up and running.
Mayor, just a procedural issue. As I look in here, I don't ever see anything that says why. I know it's being moved there, but not what
This
its
is for
purpose
the,
of moving it.
This is for the Cottington County Pro Pheasants, I believe, is who's having their banquet out at the Extension Building.
Can we just procedurally have that included in the description, so we're not, I get asked that question when people hear it or read it in the paper, and I don't know. If I look at this, I really don't know what it's being moved for. I just know where it's being moved.
I apologize for that, Mike, because I thought we were going to do that, and I'll follow up on that and make sure it's there in the future for us. It does have on there Zeus, a temporary license, tells us where, but it doesn't tell us what for. So it'd be real easy. Yeah, it'd be really easy to do that, and now make sure that's done in the future. Any other questions? Hearing none, I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. B, on the same part here, for the period after 12:01 a.m., February 18th of 2017, from 1910 West Kemp to 15 2nd Street Southwest. This is transferring the license back. So what I will do, I will open the public hearing again. If there's anyone who wants to speak in favor of or against this is your opportunity. Hearing none, I will close the public hearing. I will look for a motion and a second for discussion.
So moved.
Motion by Randy, second by Beth. Any questions on this?
We charge them a transfer fee on both ends of it of $150?
That I could not say for sure.
Okay.
The answer was yes. Any other questions? Hearing none, I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Number 5, application for a new Sunday liquor sales license to Tommy Lanes Incorporated, and doing business as Tommy's Bowling Alley at 16 Maple Street South. This time I will open the public hearing. If there's anyone who wants to speak in favor of or against this is your opportunity. Hearing none, I will close the public hearing. I'll look for a motion and a second for discussion. Motion by John, second by Glenn. Any questions on this?
Is our Sunday sales dependent on food service, isn't it?
No.
No? Okay. At one time, was it or not? Okay.
One time, yes.
Any other questions? Okay. Hearing none, if there are no other questions, I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Number 6, ordinance number 16-29, amending the section 14.0704 regarding the inspection of Dutch elm disease infections. This is a second reading. I'll look for a motion and a second for discussion purposes. Motion by Bruce, second by Beth. Justin, you want to take that on for us?
Certainly will do, Mayor. This ordinance, again, has now been brought up. I think this is ultimately the 4th time, and the reason for it is because of the convoluted manner in which it needed to be revised. But it is a comprehensive revision to Title 14, which is indicated in the revised title in the ordinance, which you can see in your packet there. The changes are meant to provide clarity to what the forestry superintendent is able to do in order to respond to diseases. It empowers the city council to be able to add diseases in the future, and currently there are 2 diseases that are fatal, fast spreading, can be abated only by chopping down the trees, which are included in this draft of the ordinance. And so if the city council has any specific questions, I'm happy to answer them. But otherwise, this has been unchanged for the last couple of readings.
Any questions for Justin on this? Hearing none, I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Justin. Number 7, second reading of ordinance number 17-01, amending chapter 21.70, the revised ordinances of the city of Watertown regarding home occupations. At this time, I will open the public hearing if there's anyone who wants to speak in favor of or against this. Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. I'll look for a motion and a second for discussion. Motion by Bruce, second by Mike. Justin, you want to give us a little heads up on this?
Will do, Mayor. This ordinance, as you recall, was brought up at a work session here now a while back, and that then was handled because it's an amendment to Title 21 by the Plan Commission and received their recommendation. So it is now before you in substantially the same form as it's been presented throughout. The genesis of this concept was the mayor, rightly noted that the changing dynamics within the workforce here in this region and elsewhere in the country is towards more individuals working at home, telecommuting, and so what is attempted here is a way to ensure that those folks aren't caught up in a zoning ordinance that is targeted at individuals that could diminish the value of their neighbor's property, diminish or change the nature of the neighborhood by their home-based business or employment. And so this ordinance attempts to tackle that issue as well as to incorporate into writing what has been the established internal policy of building services on second floor, which is if it's not going to create the nuisance problems, if there's no way that that's going to happen, it doesn't need to go before the Board of Adjustment for a conditional use permit. So.
Justin, the only question I have on here as I read through that, is there a definition of family member? I'm just wondering how far that can go because you can't have anybody that's not a family member working there, right? So I'm just curious, is that an immediate family member? Is it third cousin of a second cousin?
So
kind of thing?
The way the definition reads in Chapter 2190 is the occupation shall be carried on or conducted only by members of a family residing in the dwelling. So because we don't provide any further definition like saying nuclear or extended, we'd say that if they are related by blood or by legal by a legal relationship there that would establish a family relationship, that if they live in the dwelling, that would then be sufficient to meet our home occupations definition. But that's just a sort of a shotgun response to your question.
But they must be residing there. So if my dad had a business and I lived down the street, technically I couldn't be working there.
So, yes, if you aren't residing there, and residing doesn't necessarily mean domiciliary, doesn't mean that that's your formal residence, so to speak. So, yeah, I mean, if people wanted to quibble, that's...
I know my folks were very happy when I moved out, so.
I just would add to that, I'll ask the same question a different way. You can't rent your bedroom out for the office for somebody you don't know. I mean, the point is, that should be covered under family member. Okay.
Okay. We are, how does that go? We are family. All right. Yeah, I do.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor already, so I will look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Number 8, ordinance number 1704, amending section 10.0202 of the revised ordinance of the city of Watertown to clarify procedure for modification variances to the fire code. This is a second reading, and I will look for a motion and a second for discussion. Motion by Beth, second by Bill. And if you want to take that then first, Justin.
Certainly, sir. So this is the second, this ordinance here is merely a house cleaning measure. The Chief Kranz was kind enough to come here to answer any questions that you might have substantively. Really what this is meant to do is provide what is in essence a variance procedure specific to our fire code. Will do. Sorry about that. So this is a variance procedure for our fire code, and what we had in there before was language that was not clear. This merely takes language derived directly from the International Fire Code and plugs it in to replace language that was unclear prior to with clear language.
Any questions for Justin on this?
Mayor, and so, like any other ordinance, any ordinances come to the city council for final approval. So if there's changes to this, does that come to the council, or does that just happen through the chief and city hall? How do changes take place?
Yeah, this has been a real progress because when Justin came on board, he's actually literally gone through each and every ordinance and has looked and seen if there's other areas in the ordinance that are kind of the same thing, then we need to eliminate some. We needed to bring this up to date when he started going through all the fire ordinances. Then he's got the chief that's on board. They went through each and every one individually, and when they see changes like this, that's why they're bringing this in front of us.
No, I'm referring to the fire code itself. If there's changes to the requirements within the fire code, is that an ordinance change, or is that just documentation change?
I think that's documentation that's changes, but then the fire department would then bring those documents to the city to change the ordinance.
Well, and I would just clarify one point too. The nature of a variance is very fact dependent, and it is only impacting a particular situation, a unique situation. The way the language reads in here is that it has to be a very unique situation where modification would not lessen health, life, and fire safety requirements, but it needs to be tweaked because of some, very specific factual situation where the rules just don't apply in the spirit of the rule. Is that fair to say, Chief? And Chief Kranz can certainly comment further, but that last sentence there, the particulars of such modification when granted or allowed and the decision of the fire chief thereon shall be entered upon the record of the department, and a signed copy shall be furnished the applicant. So the variance, if you will, would be signed off by the chief, would apply only to that very particular circumstance and would be stored there. But the general International Fire Code would still apply to everybody else.
Right. And I think you understand that. I think we understand, but I think the direction we're kind of heading to is how does that change come in front of the council? Is it something that changes in the international code that you then bring in front of
Right.
Justin and
Oh,
myself?
That's
I
where I was
see,
going.
I see.
Who then
Thank you
brings
for the
it in front of the
clarification.
council for
So
action to change the ordinance?
the applicant for, there would be somebody who would seek the change with you, Chief Krantz, isn't that correct? Somebody that you would be regulating?
Yeah, on this particular one, that's exactly how it would work. If there's a variance that would need to be done within, that would not seem practical with this particular ordinance, then it would go through this process and be brought to us by either the owner of the property or through an inspection or a question or concern if they're meeting the ordinance.
So in other words, then, this process does not involve the city council?
I'm gonna try this again.
Okay.
There are changes to the fire code that occur that the city either chooses to adopt or not adopt. Okay, that's what I'm referring to. The changes that get accepted to the fire code, not the requests for variance. I'm talking about the requirements.
Yeah, so how that works is the International Fire Code will upgrade and adopt a new section every 2 to 3 years, I think it is. So then what we would do is to adopt our city ordinance, International Fire Code ordinances to comply with the new updated series. So we don't have to go through the whole thing. We just adopt that.
Okay.
That
So
addition.
when that happens, then that change to the new fire code
Yes.
comes to the council as an ordinance change to accept that.
Yes.
Okay. Second question I had, and then I'm going to be done. What if I am one that is seeking a variance and I don't get my variance? Is there a system in here for appeal in any manner? Like we do have on any of our other variance request systems?
You know, that's, I'm not real sure on that as far as, that might be more of a fire prevention question, but I believe if they don't agree with, don't get their variance or don't agree with, what we're stating, I think they could probably run it through one of the other committees. Would that be correct, or? Yeah, that would be.
Well,
also.
This is...
no, our variance requests do not, they go through a committee
They do.
and then,
This would be brought up in front of our Tuesday committee meeting. We would be
okay,
talking.
so there is a process if somebody, I think that's important.
If I
If it's a
could-
health and safety issue, though, does that have a difference process or no?
So I can give you the appeals procedure. I just looked it up in our ordinances here. It's 10-0208. Whenever the fire chief shall disapprove an application or refuse to grant a permit applied for, so that first part, an application for this modification, or when it is claimed that the provisions of the code do not apply or that the true intent and meaning of the code has been misconstrued or wrongly interpreted, the applicant may appeal from the decision of the fire chief to the governing body within 30 days, the governing body being this body.
Right, and more than likely, it would come in front of our committee, who would then bring it in front of the council, you know, to look at that. Absolutely. Okay, any other questions? Hearing none, I will look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Number 9, a resolution correcting the legal description in resolution number 16-32, which vacated a public right-of-way alley in the J.F. Monk subdivision, resolution number 17-03. I don't mean to giggle on that, but it's just kind of crazy how this happened. So I would like to get a motion and a second for discussion on this. Motion by John, second by Mike. And you want to give us a little clue what happened over here, Justin?
Certainly, Mayor. First of all, let
Maybe
me
you could put that up on the screen, Shane.
apologize to the council for being so obtuse here in that last item. I'll try not to be as obtuse here because this is meant to be an item that corrects a resolution for vacation that this body had approved here back in the fall of 2016. Really, it amounts to a corrective deed, if you will, for a vacation, or the corrective deed equivalent here, because this resolution would simply correct the legal description. of what was vacated previously. Now, why it can do that and not go through the same long process, fully involved process of a vacation is because all due process requirements were fulfilled in that previous petitioning process. And so what happened here was essentially everybody was on notice as to what was to be vacated. That was made clear in the visual depiction. The only thing that was not correct exactly was the legal description, and it was something that didn't get caught until the county took a look at the documentation here in January. So what this resolution does is it proposes to make sure that that language is accurate. And the reason why it wasn't accurate to begin with was because you're talking a plat of development from the 1800s, handwritten, which was a replat to begin with, so there was already a second set of lines on it. Trying to make heads or tails out of it was tough. So because, again, the due process requirements were met, because the two parties involved in this, the ones that stand to take from the land that was vacated, were the only two parties that were involved in the petition, this should be able to be adequately addressed by this corrective resolution. The one thing I would ask from the council is leave to amend the title. It says J.F. Monk's subdivision in the title. The subdivision, as is noted in the corrected legal description, is simply Monk's subdivision. So I would ask for the council's consideration there.
Any questions for Justin on this? Hearing none, I will look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Number 10, a resolution reestablishing a moratorium on receiving applications for off-premise signs within the city of Watertown. Resolution number 17-04. This time I'll look for a motion and a second for discussion. Who was the, Randy, you made the motion? And Mike, you second? Okay, Randy made the motion, Mike second. I will let you, Justin, go ahead and work on that for us.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. So this resolution is in many ways a substantive copy of what was originally adopted by the City Council back in early 2016. At that time, the City Council was looking at, my understanding, a way of updating the sign code ordinance here in zoning ordinance in Title 21. And in anticipation of the work of the sign code committee, the thought was to hold off on off-premise sign applications while this period of flux was ongoing. Now, simply put, the sign code committee has not brought before this body a completed draft of the sign code ordinance. I think there may be a few individuals on the city council that can provide more of a historical background there, but I think from my limited perspective, I believe that we're very close. And so what this resolution attempts to do is to reestablish the moratorium, which had lapsed on January 4th, 2017, and have it last for up until August 21st, 2017, or when that ordinance, sign code ordinance, is adopted by the City Council, or when the City Council chooses to lift this moratorium, whichever is a sooner occurrence.
Right. And I got to think that sign code group has just about got it wrapped up. It shouldn't be too much longer. Any questions on this, you guys?
Didn't we originally think this was only going to take a couple months to begin with?
Yeah, but then Bruce got involved.
Yeah, well, he always makes things difficult.
Seriously,
No,
seriously,
on the serious
folks.
side, it is going very, very well.
What happened was that we changed from the original intent for change was very minor compared to what came about once we saw that Gilbert, Arizona ruling. Then it was decided that we would look at changing the whole ordinance to fit that court case so that we were, compliant with federal regulations in the federal courts. So that's kind of what put this thing in a tailspin for a long time. And I will say I don't know that we are that close yet. And the reason I say that is because I fully believe, and I've said this all along, we do need to get the public invested in this process. there's got to be people from the public, business people, people that build signs, and business people in our community involved in how this thing shakes out. What our final product is as far as a ordinance goes. And so I do think we have a little time, but we just need to push it forward, because it seems like there's a big stretch of time between every time we meet. And I'd like to see us try to get together a little bit more often and get this done. Because I think First District had this retooled for us, maybe a month and a half ago. So yeah, we need to keep plugging away at this to get it done.
Yeah, and I don't disagree that we need to get the public involved, but I would like to say we need to come to grips with it ourselves before we bring the public in to show them a product that we feel is workable. So I think that it's a good point to get this here stretched out 6 months. I believe we can get it done.
If it's so, the only thing I would say that I feel we should do is not wait until the last minute, if it's not done by then,
right,
to bring the moratorium forward again before that time comes. So.
Right, and we can do that, and that's a good point, Randy. Any other questions, comments? Hearing none, I'll look for council action.
Mayor, I'd like to recuse myself because I do work for a sign manufacturing company.
Okay. I will look for council action then. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. I'm just writing myself a note here.
Mayor, while you're writing yourself a note, can I can either deal with it in old business, but it does relate to this, and it's a point that Randy made. It's my understanding when we put this moratorium in place, it actually expired before it was brought back to us for reconsideration of extending it. Is that correct?
That is correct.
I really believe that as standard procedure on any moratorium, whatever that is, we as a council should be notified in advance of any what is the word I want to use? Termination of an expiration of a moratorium, so that we have the opportunity to make a decision to expand it or to let it lapse, because a lapse can create a problem for us. And I just think, as far as any moratorium that we do, standard procedure must be it has to come back to us to consider as a council prior to it expiring. I don't know if we have a procedure that deals with moratoriums or what, but that really should be standard procedure for us.
I think there will be from now on.
If I could, Mayor, yeah, I will make personal guarantee that is something that's adopted. That's a failing on my part. So.
And I know there's a lot more that came into this after the fact. Evidently, I wasn't aware of something that happened in wherever you guys just brought up in Arizona or whatever it was. But I think we owe it to the taxpayers to put on a moratorium for reality time frame, put it that way. I mean, this, when we originally put this on, I think we were talking 2 months. We're already past a year. Now we're talking another 6 months. Sometimes I do realize it's going to take that long to do something, but I think we got to have a little reality to that also.
Okay, I'm going to move on. Number 11, authorization for the mayor to sign a lease agreement with Rita Nelson for city-owned land. At this time, I'll look for a motion and a second for discussion. Motion by Glenn, second by Beth. Justin, you want to take this here quick?
I can certainly do that, Mayor. This lease agreement is a continuation in terms of substance of a lease agreement that existed prior, with a few exceptions. This leased land is to the north of town. My understanding, knowing vaguely the history of it, is that this land was purchased by the city in anticipation of a water retention proposal. And since then, it has been leased out essentially as grazing land. And the land itself is bounded by trees. It's pretty good in that sense. It doesn't have a source of water located on the premises, but it is also quite small for grazing land in terms of it being sort of a postage stamp there. Ms. Nelson has, had a lease with the city now for a number of years. She's asked to again lease this land. In consultation with the mayor, the price has increased from an annual rent of $300 or 350, I believe is what it was, Mayor, to an amount here of $425. So a substantial increase there. I've also ensured that in the obligations of lessee, that requirements to maintain fence, to engage in sustainable grazing methods, and other requirements are included in the explicit terms. Ms. Nelson has signed off on these terms, and so this lease agreement would be for 3 years. There was not a public hearing for this particular lease because it fell under the annual dollar amount requirement. So
One of the things, just to be clear, there's no water on the property. You know, for a few head of cattle that she has up there, she does have to bring water to them. So it's not the greatest of property. Weeds also, she has to keep the weeds down so they are sprayed, so we don't have to do that either. So there are some benefits to us to have somebody up there.
Mayor, is there, or Shane, is there, I have no idea where this land is, and it didn't come with a map. Any chance we could pull that up so everybody can see where this is?
And let's see if we can zoom out all the way. Let's see how far away that is. So there's the little postage stamp, and there's Lake Campesca.
Yeah,
Right up there.
8 some miles so north, 8 to 9 miles north.
Justin, and the city did buy these properties up here, you know, for the anticipation of a Mahoney Dam, if you remember. There was an opportunity to pick up a few acres up in that area, and they did it at that time.
I have 2 quick points, Just. I think any lease should have notice periods in it. You reference notice, but it isn't 30-day notice, 60-day notice. And I think there ought to be something in it just so both parties have time to react on that. Mm-hmm. And the second point is, under the notice section number 9, there's a term I'm not familiar with. I'm hoping it's a typo because I've never heard of it before. That via certified mail, REH1M.
That's correct. It should read return receipt requested. Yes.
Well, that's just a typo, but then I think you ought to put 30-day or something in there. There should always just be a reactionary period if you're going to give notice in a lease.
Yes, I will make that change.
So is that a dramatic change? Do we have to bring that back, or are you good to go?
No, yeah, that would be just fine to make that change. Yeah, we'd have to make the change, but it's, I guess yeah.
You're okay.
It's not substantive.
All right, so now we'll look for, if there's no other discussion, I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Number 12, authorization for the mayor to sign a professional service agreement with RS Architects for the Watertown Community Safe Room, AKA Tornado Shelter, project in the amount of $19,000. I'll look for a motion and a second for discussion on this. Motion by Beth, second by Mike. You got any questions on this? They're working on the Safe House Community Safe House, Safe Room, Tornado Shelter. This is out by the soccer fields.
My only question on this is, this is a 25-75 between us and FEMA, is that right? The way it's being funded?
I believe that's correct.
I mean,
Is
do
it
the
not?
architectural fees fall under that as well?
Yes, this is a 75-25, and the fees are part of that total cost and are partially, 75% of those fees are included, are grant-funded fees as well, so.
But my understanding is you need to pay them up front and then you're reimbursed. Am I correct?
I guess that's what they
That's
like
what they
to
tell
pay
us.
up front, so.
Yeah, I don't get it.
I assume because of dollar amount, we didn't bid this out. What is the dollar amount threshold for bidding these?
This
things
is
out?
just for professional services at this point in time.
That's correct. Architectural. Yes.
Any questions? Hearing none, I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Number 13, authorization for the mayor to sign a letter of intent to convey the Watertown School District number 14-4, a portion of the Watertown Rec Center within 3 months' time. What I'll do, I'll look for a motion and a second for discussion on this. Motion by Randy, second by Dan. Justin, you want to give them a little idea of what's going on here?
Yes, can do, Mayor. So this item was brought before this body here in a work session, and it would have been the last time the City Council met. There, the idea was broached just as an extension of a conversation that had happened earlier that day. Essentially, the school district is looking at more developed plans, going in and checking to see what they can do to potentially use this space. They want to get in there sooner rather than later. So what they asked of the city is some sort of formal indication as to whether or not the city would be willing to allow them or provide some indication of the city's willingness to convey this portion depicted in Exhibit A to the school district. As noted in this letter, the particular legal description is a description for the surrounding area, but what is labeled Exhibit A is specific to the particular structures that they want to gain access to. And so by this letter, the council would be conveying its plan to, within the next 3 months, convey by resolution this particular portion of the Watertown Recreational Center to the school district. What I've asked is, as consideration for this grant, that the school district sign an indemnification and hold harmless agreement that can be found on the second page. I have verified with their legal counsel as well as with Mr. Hone that this language is acceptable. And so what this language would do is survive the termination of the letter of intent and the transfer of the above described premises, so it would convey protection, legal protection, well after the transfer is envisioned. So with that, if you have any particular questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, any questions for Justin on this?
Mayor, I probably have a question of you on this, but as that building gets vacated, obviously we wouldn't do this with anything that is needed for that building, but if there are things that are a part of that building today that either have value or have a residual value of maybe being sold or used elsewhere, would we have the right to take those things? For example, I don't know what's all in that boiler room. Well, we're going to have, or not boiler room, the pool area, whatever the systems room. Don't know if there's anything in there that maybe is of add value as a backup for the outdoor pool or something for the new facility or starting blocks that are there that some other community might look to buy. Do we forego any possibility of that with this as it's signed?
No, we have every right to go in there and take what we want.
As
since
long
it's
as it's not,
Yeah.
I mean, we're not going to take a hot water heater that they need to run their building, but
Right.
Yeah.
the other stuff that they would basically, we know they wouldn't need.
That's right.
We would
But-
still retain a right to that.
What they would
Absolutely.
like- Yeah, what they'd like to do is they'd like to get up in there, once we move into the new wellness center, that they could start jackhammering out the sides of the pool, start filling it in and get the tennis courts going for the city of Watertown. It's gonna be a
Really
great
nice.
facility, but you're absolutely right, Mike. We have things that are breaking down in other facilities that they may work. They may work, and I think that's worth us to have our park and rec go up there, have TK go and take a look at that and say, can we use this or that? You can do that for me,
Or-
Jay?
Or at that point, deem it surplus, so, yep.
Yep, exactly. No,
Is this-
I'm all up for that.
Is this in agreement with all three parties? The city and the Boys and Girls Club and the...
This really, we don't have an agreement with the Boys and Girls Club on this side. We have the same thing on their side already in place. So this here just needs to be done with the school.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And this is an ownership transfer.
that's correct. Inside, not the building itself, the inside of it. They didn't want to take the building, I don't get it. Yeah, I'd sell them the whole building. Yeah, and then, they are going to be knocking out the walls on the, correct me if I'm wrong, when I said the inside, is it that side of the building, is that where we're conveying the whole thing?
I don't have any indication as to it not including the structure itself, I guess.
Okay.
That's the confusing part is the manner in which the parking lot surrounding the school is owned, because that has been carved up and repackaged, and but that's a separate issue because the building, at least a portion of the building, is on its own lot, and then we have other portions of the building not at issue here, which are on different lots. So that's, I think, maybe one of the reasons why this particular portion is being dealt with, is because it's a little bit more clear.
But it is the building. It's physically the building we are assigning them, right?
Yes, that is correct. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
that's what I
Yeah.
thought. Okay.
Any other questions? Hearing none, I will look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. I've had a lot of calls on this, ever since the public has seen they're going to do the tennis courts. It's a real positive thing. Right now, there's a lot of people heading to Sioux Falls and paying dollars to go down there. We might just well have them up here at the school. So it's a real good deal. So number 14, authorization for the mayor to enter a purchase agreement with the Watertown Development Company to convey approximately 3.51 acres of property for economic development. This is what I was showing you today, folks. Is it still up there? Do you still have that one? That shows that 3.5. You gave it back to me?
Otherwise, I have it on GIS right now if you need to.
Yeah, we have a real quick shot here. Shows a 3.51 acres. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a motion and a second for discussion purposes on this one here. Motion by Mike, second by Dan. And for discussion purposes on this, what they're doing is they are actually buying the 3.51 acres in that section number 31. It's at $17,500 per acre. $3,000 of each acre will go towards the fund at the foundation office. The foundation office uses that for drug dogs and things such as that. That was part of the Andrus's agreement when he first took it on. So we're looking at doing this. He's got, there is a little stipulation in this whole thing that says Wade would have to build this within 24 months. He has to have some type of an agreement that he starts building. Now, there is a lot up in number 11 over there. You can see in the top left. I think I wrote a little note on the very top. That was purchased in 2007. It still doesn't have anything built on it. It still has a 24-month agreement, as we have in this one. But they're able to come in and kind of get that expanded upon. They can spread that out a little bit. What we're trying to do is, with the 24-month process on that, we don't really want people to come in and buy these pieces of property and then speculate that they're going to now turn back and sell this thing for $20,000 an acre. So it gives us right of first refusal if they ever do want to sell the property, which we have been offered at another time on other properties out there and have turned them down. So that being said, have you got any questions on this piece of property? This would be a good deal. This is split 50-50 with the development company and the city of Watertown, and is the last piece of property in this addition.
Mayor, can you share what the intent of the
Yes.
buyer's
Yeah.
intent is for this land?
Yeah, currently we have a porta potty business that is going to be putting their porta potties out there. They'll have the whole side where you have lot 30 to 29. 29 is owned by the utilities. There will be fencing going up across 29th, across the north side behind Walmart, and again coming down in front of that other business that's to the east. But they're currently looking at that. There'll be no cleaning of the facilities out there. When they're moved out onto this lot, they'll be clean and ready to go. His business currently is mainly in the northeast South Dakota. It's kind of from the Brookings area all the way up into Millbank, up into Sisseton, and east and west in that same area. That's what he's looking at. There will be some storage up there. When he gets his building in there, he'll have enough storage inside to keep them in. That's the plan.
Could I just get a little further explanation on what's going on with that upper left lot in the 24-month situation, so I fully understand that?
Right. Up in the box 11, it's I can't think of his first name. Lacqua. Darren Lacqua owns that, and he bought that with the intent to build a building, and it's just never built anything. Has come in numerous times and asked for an extension on the 24 months. That piece of property is for sale. Darren has come to the city and to the development company and has asked us to purchase that back from him, and we have at this particular time told him no, we're not interested in buying. So we've given him that ability to extend that out. Yep. Yep. Any other questions?
Just a point of clarification, we're actually selling it to the development company, is that correct?
The development company actually owns this piece of property, and we're selling it to Wade. I can't think of his last name, but Wade is actually buying this all from the development company. We will share in any of the proceeds on the land to the city of Watertown. Now, the land proceeds come in 50-50. They also have 50 cents per acre. I think it's about $77,000 per square foot. It's about $77,000 that will come directly to the city without a cost share, because that is for infrastructure that we had put in place.
Mayor, if you don't mind a point of clarification, my understanding in talking with Michelle is that that this land is currently owned by the city of Watertown, so it would go through the...
So it would be conveyed, I'm sorry, I
That's-
thought you guys, yeah, you're right. I thought that you already had that in, so we will convey that to the development company. It will then be sold to Wade. So you're absolutely right, Glenn.
And if I could, Mayor...
No. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Well, in keeping with the last agreement here, I wanted to ask the council's consideration for an amendment to the purchase agreement, just to encompass what is the understanding of WDC, the city, and all parties involved, which is that and this would be on page 2 of the agreement, the red underlined versions here encompass what's being suggested to be changed. All it is providing that the items that are to be taken out before the full amount is remitted to WDC and to the city are to come out of the sale of the land. In other words, the public improvement portion of the sale is not to be touched. That is to be conveyed directly back to the city in full amount.
Okay, any other questions? Hearing none, I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Number 15, consideration of bids received for the golf course Greensmore. Jay, I'm going to let you kind of discuss that a little bit before I go for a motion. Thanks, Justin.
Good evening.
Well, bids were opened on January 30th for Greensmore for Cattail Crossing Golf Course. 2 bids were received. The low bid was from Midwest Turf and Irrigation for a total of $26,881. This is a 2017 budgeted project. It was budgeted at $35. The Park and Rec Board has since met, and they motioned to recommend to accept the low bid of $26,881 from Midwest Turf. This is for Toro, Greensmaster, Greensmore.
Okay, so what I'll do, I will go look for a motion in a second. Thanks, Michelle. Motion is second for discussion.
Second.
Motion by Dan, second by Mike. Also, if you would tell us where the other mower is going.
The old mower is a 2004 Toro, and Todd did some checking on what the allowance would be for that as far as the trade-in, and we was hoping it would be greater than $1,000, and it only came in at $500 or $600. So just felt there was a little greater value in keeping that and using that on a roller, with a roller, and using it on the course as well.
Yeah, I think that's a good point there. Yeah, any questions?
And Jay, this the Toro matches up with all the other mowers that we have that are of this same type, correct? So there's a standardization that we're working with, and
yes, we have one existing 14-blade greens mower now, and this will give us 2 that when we look at the yellow and red course for tournament play and that type of thing, when those greens get mowed in the morning, they're going to be mowed the same way that the players to our course are going to have the same conditions when they switch from course to course.
Okay, of course, yeah. Any questions? Hearing none, I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thanks, Jay.
Thank you.
Number 16, consideration of bids received for 2 3/4-ton pickups for the solid waste department. I'm going to look for a motion in a second, and we'll have discussion and have Mike start on that for us. I got a motion by Mike and second by Bill. Mike, if you'd go ahead and tell us what you got.
Bids were opened on January 18th for these 2 new 3/4-ton 4-wheel drive pickups. 2 bids were received. Both bids were from Watertown Ford Chrysler. The low bid that meets the specification from Watertown Ford Chrysler is in the amount of $28,893 per pickup, or $57,786 for 2 new Ram 2500s. And the trucks were bid without trade-in. Both used units will be transferred to the street department. So we would like to recommend awarding this bid to Watertown Ford Chrysler. And I would point out that the local bids are $835 per pickup below the state bid. Below the state bid, yep.
Any questions for Mike? Randy, did you...
I will recuse myself from this vote for conflict of interest.
Any questions? If not, I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thanks, Mike. And I think the street department will look forward to seeing those new trucks. And
yep, they both come with snow plows, too.
Yeah, it'll work out really well. Thank you. Yep, that's a good thing. Okay, number 17, consideration of bids received for 95-gallon containers for the solid waste department. I'll look for a motion and a second for discussion. Motion
second
by Bruce, second by Randy. Go ahead, Mike.
Again, bids were opened on January 18th for solid waste 95-gallon containers. 3 bids were received. The low bid that meets the specification from Northern Truck Equipment of Sioux Falls is for the Cascade Icon 96 container, one we've bought several times over the years. And the amount of the bid is $47.69 per container. So we'd like to recommend awarding this bid to Northern Truck Equipment for the Cascade container for $47.69 per container delivered to Watertown. And this is 54 cents per container less than last year's bid.
Perfect. Any questions for Mike?
How many are we buying?
About 950 approximately.
Mike, are these assembled, or we shut through the assembly?
They're mostly assembled. We attach the wheels. Is about it.
Is that the case at all of them?
Yeah, they come in stacks of 9, and so we have to snap the wheels up. That's pretty simple.
I got an extra set at my house that got knocked off my container a couple weeks ago. So
we can take care of that.
You did actually.
You have a hell of a time.
Oh, I know. First my mailbox, then my. No, they did. They came right over and got her taken care of.
Good. Thank you.
Any questions for Mike? Hearing none, I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Number 18, any old business. I would like to, before we get out of here, I just want to make sure that you understand that the next council meeting will be on Tuesday, the 21st, as Monday is President's Day. Same thing with garbage pickup. Garbage pickup will not occur on Monday. Am I correct, Mike? It'll happen on Tuesday, the 21st. So is there any other old, pardon me? Yeah, it'll be picked up on the Friday before for the garbage. I think that's working out very well now. Any old business you guys need to discuss?
Quick update on the Cherry Creek water issue up there.
Shane, you're up.
Okay, so what we need to do is get our committee together and kind of finalize our scope of what we want to attempt up there. I have run some preliminary ideas past the Corps, and they've given me some ideas of what we can and can't do as far as approaching the project and the problem. And I'm not sure it'll become a council decision as to how big a project we want to make it or what we can get done.
So timing wise, when I get a call on this, what's the timing of this?
To be determined.
Has there been anything budgeted for that in the current year? There wasn't there?
Okay, in every year we've had a $200,000 budget item for work in drainage ways. This year, I am asking, or going to ask from Finance Office to roll over the 2016 budget to include that with the 2017 budget, so we actually will have a 2-year allotment for that money. So that becomes more realistic to complete a project. $200,000 probably wouldn't get this project built. So that's part of the budgeting issue as well.
Is that still an issue with mitigating that? Is that what the problem is? Why we can't?
Okay, so the Corps has determined that the I call it Cherry Creek and area, but that is a tributary to Willow Creek. So any wetlands associated with the drainage way through there are protected wetlands and would need to be mitigated if we're going to impact them. So that's a major scope change to a project in that vicinity. So that's what we need to discuss and decide which direction we want to go with that project.
Couple things, Mayor. Don, I'm glad you brought that up because that was one of my points that I was going to bring up as well. But I don't know, Mayor, if you want to share what the tentative opening date would be for and very tentative as we sit today for the community center. And then secondly, I know there's been some additional discussion now, again, publicly about the mall parking lot. And I haven't heard anything out of that now for several months. Just curious where that's at.
Interesting. I'll take the second, the latter one first here. The mall parking lot. Interesting enough, I did get a call or a message from Scott Snitker, I believe is his name, from the mall. He wants to meet. I believe I have a meeting with him Wednesday afternoon when we get back from Pier. So we will be opening some more discussions with them. I think that both parties, the city and the mall, really need to get something accomplished. And I think that they're open to discussing. I think we need to be open to discussing some things. So that's going to move forward here, and I think it's going to move forward faster than I had anticipated here just recently. So that'll be coming in front of you shortly. Opening date on the Prairie Lakes Wellness Center. Currently, what we're looking at right now is to have some I think it's tours. I think we're going to have tours up there on March the 18th and March the 19th. We'll be holding tours from 12 o'clock to 5 o'clock every day. That's a Saturday and Sunday of March 18th and 19th. Once we have those tours completed, we will be having hopefully the opening date, grand opening, we'll have a ribbon cutting on the 20th of March that morning. And at that particular time, as soon as the ribbon cutting is done, It'll be open for business. It's a great facility, you guys. And I wish I had, I'm mad at Jack, tell him that, if you see him up there tomorrow. He was supposed to send me the video of you coming down the slide.
I would tell
I
you, that
don't
was a lot
have
of
it.
fun, actually.
I
I did
don't
it several
have that.
times, going down. It is a really fast slide.
I think people are going to love it up there. I did want to bring up one more item for water issue that was brought to my attention that you'll need to take a look at. On Roby Creek to the north up there on 7th, 8th Avenue, 6th, 7th, and 8th, we've made bigger culverts up there. We were pushing water through faster than we had in the past. Shane. Okay, so what's happened is that now this water is coming in faster up there and going down faster. Our culverts are a little bit undersized as the further you get down, which is creating more of a retention pond just a little bit up north of, say, 3rd and 4th Avenue over there, which in turn is going into people's garages, and we need to address that. We need to look at it and see if we can move some, since we've created faster water up and slowed it down, we need to look at that and get that squared away.
Okay, we'll talk
I
about it
just
and
happened
get
to
look
think
at it.
about that. I talked to the guy last week, and I have it written down in my office, but when you brought up the other creek, it was kind of brought my attention. You ever notice how that Roby word comes up all the time?
Trouble.
Not in good conversation at it. No, it's all good. Any other things that, any liaison member reports?
I was going to bring up one thing. Hopefully you're not going to reach down here and slap me, but the people from Retail Strategies will be here with boots on the ground on Wednesday and Thursday. I believe there's going to be 3 of them here. They're going to be doing basically inventory of the city as far as properties and what we have for retail. And so it's I asked to have lunch with them. They said they don't have time in 2 days to have lunch, so they are planning on staying pretty busy. So looking forward to getting them started and see where we can go from there. So
Perfect. I would also like to mention, I don't think many of you came, I don't think I mentioned about Shelley getting a pie in her face. Did I, to you guys? Huh? I don't have a video of it, but I got to tell you, you know, with the United Way, it was just a great meeting that we had, and Shelley and I both got a pie in our face. It just happened that it wasn't city employees that threw it. Maybe that's a good thing. Beth's husband nailed Shelley pretty good, and the wall behind, and himself, yeah. And then Doug take off, did he? Doug's wife nailed me with a pie, and but it was all in good fun. It was all a great time. So that's my liaison member report. Is there any need to go into executive session?
Mayor, I have a question. At one time, you talked about the lake and that you were looking into any possibilities financially to do something with that. And I don't know what something means, but, you know, because there's such an issue out there. Now that the berm is in place, it would behoove us, I think, if there is any help of any kind, to move forward on that.
We're kind of taking it in baby steps. We've had a meeting. Glenn, you were at the meeting the other night, and we kind of were looking to see what Storm Lake, Iowa is doing with the water. It's a huge undertaking to do that. One of the things that I think we have the right person that's kind of being looking at different ideas for the lake, and that's Roger Foote. Roger loves the lake, and Roger has been very involved in all these things. We're actually going to approach the National Guard and see if they could put up a temporary bridge maybe across from Lunkers to the Solberg property, where we could put backhoes in on top of that and back trucks up there and dig out that sand and what have you out there at Lunkers. It's a very dangerous place, so we're going to kind of approach them and see if they'll do anything with us, and if there's a possibility to do it. It'd be kind of fun. Be fun to see. So we have to make some steps out there. There's just no doubt. That was Shelley, yeah. So that's where we're at on that, you know, and I think we're going to get something done. It's just a matter of how long will it take us, but we don't have that long to wait anymore. Okay? Any other questions?
No, well, Mayor, if I could, just want to announce tonight, in advance a little bit, because we have election coming up, that I'm not going to be running And so I want the people in Ward B to think about who might be interested in stepping forward and to stop up City Hall and get what information, or certainly call me. Great group of people here to work with. So, and you won't be sorry that you've gone through the experience. I can tell you that.
Well, thanks, Bill. We'll miss you. I'd also like to mention we lost another pillar of our community the other Sunday morning. Judge Bradshaw, he's going to be missed. He was just a great guy to be around. I was just shocked when I seen that. I just saw him a week or so ago, and just a wonderful man. And the Bradshaw family, you have our condolences, and I want you to know we're thinking about you. Anything else?
I would just like to point out that Justin earned twice his wage today. We put him through the ringer with about all of the more than half of the agenda items, but I really appreciate your attention to detail on all of those revisions and going through our ordinances to make sure they get updated.
It's my pleasure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I will look for a motion, a second to adjourn. Motion by John, second by Glenn. All in favor say aye. Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.